All right, EdTech Dialect session, AI in your area. Thank you for joining. I want to dive right in, and the first thing that I do want to talk to you about, and Cisco just asked this question, is like, how does it pertain to students as far as like cheating and stuff like that? So I'm going to start with some basics, but before I get to that, I just want to say briefly, it is very hard and next to impossible to bust students for using AI as plagiarism or cheating. Okay, so be aware of that. Several institutions have tried, they have failed. It's ended up in a lawsuit, and you can look those things up. So we, as I've told faculty in faculty days and repeated several times, we have really two choices when it comes to AI. We can keep doing, choice number one, we can keep doing what we're doing and worry about cheating, or we can change how we're doing and how we're approaching our instruction. And that's from the instructional standpoint. Okay, and I know that sounds like brash and to the point, but it's the reality. I didn't come up with this. It's just how it is. We can't just say, hey, I need you to write a 4 to 6 page paper, or maybe we're going to do a 6 to 8 page paper. How about 2 to 3 page paper on this topic? Go ahead and write it, and not expect them to go to the AI model and just boom, churn one out. Most students will not do that. Some students will do that. Think back to when you were in that position. Not saying you would, but hopefully you might use it as a starting point. So with that being said, I want to use this as kind of a conversation piece. So at any point in time, if you have any questions, feel free to ask if you're here in person. And also if you're virtual or if you're in person and on the Teams, you can use the chat feature as well. And I'll try and keep an eye on it, but that will help this conversation. If you've used AI in any way, if you have questions about how you might use AI, all of these things are fair game. And my ideal here is that you're not just going to learn from what I have to say, but you're going to learn from what others have thought about maybe doing or maybe already done. And that's going to help to kind of really enrich this whole thing. So, like I said, I do have some things that I want to touch on first with regard to entry-level artificial intelligence. And then I want to get into 8 different questions that I have for our institution. So if it seems like I'm talking really fast, I am. And if you need me to slow down on any topics or repeat anything, just ask. Okay. But I want to make sure I get through all this. So the first thing is understanding that AI has been around for a long time. Okay. Alexa, Siri, grammar checkers, things like that. We've used those. They've been part of our lives. We don't even think about them as robots taking over the world. Okay. In late 2022, generative AI really kind of burst on the scene. It was available before, but it became more mainstream. All right. And so we've seen a rapid transformation in terms of not just education and what we deal with in the areas that we are, but a lot of other areas as well. And it's transformed and revolutionized and scared us maybe a little bit. And I hate it when presenters start with, how many of you are scared of AI? Okay. Not that you're not, but it kind of sets the tone in a negative pattern. I want you to think in terms of this session, in terms of a growth mindset. All right. In terms of how not how can we stop this, because you're not going to stop it, but how can we use it? How can we put it to use in our different areas around campus, whether you're instruction and your financial aid or wherever you are at, dealing with students or not dealing with students or somewhere in between. So I don't want you to say, we are not going to use this, because ultimately, if you have that mind frame, I also want you to tell me how you're going to stop it. That's the answer that I want, okay? I'm not here to convince you that you should be using it, okay? But I'm very interested in how you're going to stop people from using it if that's the route that you're going to take. So instead, I want you to think about, for this session, if nothing else, how you're going to use it. How are you going to put this to use? Because it's not going away. All right. I remember teaching high school. Lex, you were there. And it was, the big thing was like cell phones and Facebook, and we spent so much time and resources trying to stop those things. And guess what still exists today as a problem? Facebook, social media, and cell phones. Okay. AI is very similar to that. It's not going away. It's only going to get more involved and integrated into our lives. It's a resource. Okay. So much like we used to think, to do research, you had to go to the library, open up a book, Dewey Decimal System, all that stuff, and find your sources. Okay. AI can be a resource as well. Okay. What's important is thinking about process over product. I mentioned writing a paper. All right. Hey, you're going to write 4 papers this term. Here's the topics. Okay. Let's focus more on the process of writing versus the final product. All right. If we do that, there's lots of ways that AI can help us. And that's, I know from an instructional standpoint. A quote that I love, all right, is AI is not going to steal our jobs, but somebody that uses AI or an institution that uses AI might. Okay. So AI is not going to roll down Sydney Road and pull up into our parking lot and steal our jobs. Okay. But another institution might attract students that are better, the institution is better preparing them for a life after here. Okay. That includes artificial intelligence. So we got to think about those things. We're not going to stop others from using it. Repeat after me. We are not going to stop others from using it. Our job, our core job at this institution is to prepare students for a life after here. Okay. So that might involve teaching them a subject. That might involve teaching them a skill, right? And it definitely now involves teaching them about AI and how to use AI, because their employers are going to expect them to have an idea of how to use it. It is the future. So I mentioned growth mindset. What are some ideas for putting it to use? Okay. Don't overthink it. All right. If you have a task that you do every single day, Shelly, you write things. Lexi, you create things. Lisa, you try and recruit people to give things. All right. And so what are some things that you do day to day that kind of like take some time? For me, it's creating presentations. I often start my presentations, the foundation of my presentation in ChatGPT. Hey, I need to present on this. Give me a slide by slide on what that looks like. Boom, there it is. Am I done? Do I present that? No. Okay. But I've started. And sometimes the hardest thing that you can do is start. All right. So creating rubrics, creating assignments. I watched at a conference session, somebody create an entire college course in like 5 minutes. Okay. The topic of the course was an article that the person read called "Is a Little Narcissism Good in Leadership?" And they took that title and they made a course outline. And then from that course outline, they created module by module, including assignment instructions and rubrics, a course on narcissism and leadership. Okay. Very easy to do. Would that be a good course? I don't know. All right. But it's an idea. It's an example. Scenarios are very difficult to come up with. All right. I need to teach this topic. Can you write up a scenario for me? And you can do that very easily. We need to plan some spaces, redevelop some spaces around here. What are some ideas for what we can put in it? So you get some ideas in terms of how artificial intelligence can get us started and guide us, okay? You see a particular idea that AI gives you, you can dig a little bit further. I love it if I miss a meeting and it happens to be recorded like this one right here with a transcript, okay? And I would quickly bring up the transcript if I was on Teams, and you can see if you're on Teams, that transcript generating. I can go through that transcript and click on an area in Teams, and it will take me to that part of the recording, and I can rewatch it. I've done several meetings that way. I'm not saying you shouldn't attend meetings live and in person, but if you got to catch up on a meeting, that's a very efficient way to do it. All right. So those are just some core examples right there. So I want you to make sure that you are aware of AI, because I know that there's different levels of understanding when it comes to AI. The first one is understanding that you've been using AI for a long time. All right. Maybe you didn't know it. Generative AI, as I mentioned, came in late 2022. That's where we get things like ChatGPT, Bard, large language models, which is basically what those are. And we could spend a whole session going into the ins and outs of that, but that's not why you're here. The big thing when it comes to these large language models and ChatGPT is prompting. Okay. You hear things like prompt engineering. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm not an engineer. I can't do that. You can. Okay. It's as simple as, what should I make for dinner this week? I would like to have chicken, I would like to have beef, and I would like to have salmon. And it can give you a day by day really quick, just with that little prompt right there, that simple prompt on what you should have. And you might not like what they say for Tuesday. And you might realize that on Thursday, you need to have leftovers. So you ask a follow-up prompt because it remembers what you just said and will give you more information in terms of what you should eat. So I know that we all struggle with dinner and what we should make, right? There's a very simple one for you right there. So prompt your response. Once you get your response, you can go 2 ways with it. You can go a lot of ways. You can ask it to summarize or condense that response because a lot of times it'll spit out a really long response. Like, can you shorten that to just a paragraph? Sure, boom. Okay. And from there, you can fine tune it and tailor it to what you want. Shout out to Taylor. Okay. You can also say, can you expand on this idea? All right. So I really like your idea that I'm looking for ways to use AI for accessibility in a course. And I really like what it said about closed captioning. Can you expand on that? Boom. It will give me more details and expand on that. So you can go either way with that. But just once you do a prompt in ChatGPT, know that it's just getting started. All right. So how can you do or use AI, generative AI, in your areas? Well, my suggestion to you, rather than getting it from me, is to go to ChatGPT or Copilot and ask, hey, I work in this area. Here are some of the tasks that I do every single day. Here are some of the tasks that are taking up a lot of my time. How can you help me? Something as simple as that. Okay, start there. All right. So if you have routine tasks, maybe you have to write something every day. Maybe you have to fill out something every day. That's a place to start. In addition to that, accessibility is an important thing for our institution. AI can help with that. Things like immersive reader in Edge, things like caption generators for videos, all right? Translators for other languages, for non-English speakers, okay? The list goes on in terms of what we can do from that standpoint. Look at that, I even gave my instruction or my examples right there. So as I said before, if you don't have any experience using Copilot, okay, go to Edge. See if I can get this back. There we go. Apparently I closed it. Okay, go to Edge and you'll see a Copilot tab right here. Okay, you click on it and just right from here, you can start doing some prompting, some prompt engineers, make an engineer out of yourself. You can also have this create images. So I could ask this, can you create a green and yellow centurion playing, I spelled it wrong, it would know, playing volleyball. And I don't know, I should have probably said an image, but oh, it realized that I wanted to create an image. Okay, so sometimes this takes a little longer. Lots of energy is being used out in Seattle or something like that. Lots of water is cooling servers while this is cooking. No joke. AI does use a lot of energy. And there we have some images of some centurions. Have you seen Jess's emails? Those are all AI generated images if you didn't realize that. Okay. One thing you do need to be careful with when it comes to AI is hallucinations or accuracy. So I don't know, I didn't look closely at those images right there, but sometimes they'll spell centurions wrong or just not spell all of centurions or just get it wrong. Okay. Seth Sutton, one of our instructors, had a coloring book printed, and some of the children in the coloring book were missing hands and stuff like that. Not saying that children don't miss hands, but they were like melting off and stuff like that. Okay, so be aware of those things. Speaking of prompting, here's an example of prompting. I just created a GIF, describe generative AI prompting to me in one paragraph so I can get a better understanding of what I need to put in a prompt to get the information I am looking for. So some basic information there. This should jump to a second prompt or a second GIF. There we go. And you see the response. Okay. I got that response very quick. I could take that and make it larger, make it smaller, depending on what information I am looking for. Okay. So applying growth. Okay. I mentioned you need to have a growth mindset with this. Okay. Be open to new ideas and approaches. Okay, think outside the box. Think about your role, okay, and how not just you might be using it, but those that you work with could be using it, or those that you work for could be putting it to use. And understand that you might learn something right now and it might change or it might evolve. Okay, that's the way the world works. We know that one thing that's never going to change is that things are going to change. All right, so be open. There will be some frustrations with it. Okay, roll with the punches. Understand that you might make mistakes. I'm sure that if you are in an instructional setting, you tell your students all the time, it's okay to make mistakes, okay? You need to lead by example, right? If you are in an instructional standpoint or an instructional position, come in with the standpoint that students should use this. You should encourage students to put this to use, but you should also make sure that they're aware that they need to check their work. Much like we used to say, don't trust the spelling and grammar checker because it can get things wrong. You can use it, but still do your own proofreading. The same goes with AI and getting your ideas from AI, okay? It's a starting point. I mentioned the process over the product, and be curious, okay? So I mentioned using AI in your area. Honestly, I can give you examples. I ultimately don't know the work that you do in and out like you do, okay? So the best thing that you can do is take what you do on a daily basis and straight up ask ChatGPT or whatever you're using how it can help you and go from there, okay? And from there, if you're not quite sure, we can chat, okay? Or somebody from the service desk can help you, all right? Or maybe somebody that is in your department or across the hall from you has already put this stuff to use and they can help you, okay? And one of the things that I do need to touch on before we get into these questions is the ethical and responsible considerations. So you need to know a couple things. The first thing that you do need to know is that you shouldn't be putting sensitive data into ChatGPT or Copilot. An example that I have is athletics wanted to run grade reports. And I'm like, oh man, the Canvas grade reports I can pull are great, but it has like all the students. What if I could put it into a large language model and have it decipher who are athletes based on a certain data point, and then I wouldn't have to do that? No bueno, okay? Don't do that, all right? Don't put student data or anything like that into the large language models. Now, I will tell you this, because it's important that you know this. Copilot, you notice that it has this protected piece up here, okay? That is telling us that our personal and our company data are protected, okay? You also notice with Copilot, once you leave Copilot, so if I scroll down and I come back, okay, well, not now, but it eventually will refresh and this stuff will be gone. It'll be history, all right? However, we don't know enough about these models because the whole idea behind them is that they learn from what is put into them, okay? So don't put student data into ChatGPT or anything like that, okay? All right. Any questions? Check the chat. Cisco says another valuable application of ChatGPT is seeking guidance on the tone of your emails. Okay, so sometimes you're hurrying and you're not quite sure how you're coming across. Okay, it can be very helpful with that. Okay, you can be misunderstood, as Cisco said, or misinterpreted due to cultural or linguistic differences. ChatGPT can assist in refining our written patterns, ensuring our intended meaning is conveyed clearly and effectively. Okay, so that's just a quick little safeguard right there. While I have this screen up, another thing that I want to show you is, if you're not familiar with it, over here, there's another access to Copilot, but it presents itself as a little sidebar. And you can do the chat for Copilot right here, okay, and ask them to generate things. You can also use it along kind of with what Cisco's saying as a compose area. So you can have it write emails, paragraphs, LinkedIn posts, social media posts, things like that with a suggested tone. Once again, this is a starting point as far as I'm concerned. It's something to save you some time and get the ball rolling. But I could put in here, hey, write an email to my boss about this or whatever topic, okay? And I can say, hey, make it enthusiastic, or I can come up with some others as well. And boom, it will generate that for me. Okay, so that's a handy tool as well. Moving along. Okay, so in addition, I think it's very important to be transparent with students about it. Okay, it's like when you're a parent and you try and hide things from your students, hoping that someday they will never be an adult and not learn these things. Okay, this is kind of similar. Someday they're going to have to use this on their own. So why wouldn't we guide them and foster that learning with this tool? All right, we can't pretend that it doesn't exist, and that goes for a lot of different areas. Okay, I mentioned the data security and not sharing sensitive data. also understand that there's biases when it comes to these models. All right, it's going on what it's been fed. Right, so you might see some bias in the responses that you get. Another reason for you to pay attention, because remember, just like a social media post that you retweet or share, once you take it and use it, you're owning it. You can't say, well, ChatGPT wrote that. No, you shared it. Okay, so be aware of that. Establish guidelines and expectations for use. One thing that I picked up from the HLC conference, I went to a few sessions on AI, and that is policy. A big thing that everybody wants to have is a policy, right? And they said, do you have a policy for writing policies? Is anyone in here a pro on writing policy? Okay. Some of you might not want to brag, but like, how do we write policy? What's our standard in MCC for writing policy? Okay. And that's something maybe we talk about, but not in this session. Okay. All right. So as I mentioned, use it to support. It shouldn't replace humans. Okay. We should use it as a facilitation. Okay. How can they put it to use? What can they do with it? I mentioned the accessibility piece, but it is great for equity and inclusion, not just in the classroom, but for a lot of the things that we do. But at the end of the day, it's important that we have a build of AI literacy, making sure that everybody has some level of understanding of not only how we can use it, but how others might be using it so that we're aware of it. Because I know that there's a lot of fear, I don't know if that's even the right word, concern that cheating is happening or unoriginal work is happening. All right, and that's a rabbit hole that we can go down as well. But at the end of the day, we got to make sure that we are informing on it. So if you're new to generative AI, if you want to get started, first thing is you should do, as I mentioned, is hop on ChatGPT or go to Copilot. Have some fun with it. Okay. Generative AI doesn't only live in those models. Those are just the relevant examples. Canva, for those of you that use that, I did a session on it a couple weeks ago, has a lot of AI interspersed in it. Okay. Grammarly, word editor. You can even write songs now, and I'll show you that website here in a little bit. Not just the lyrics, but it'll actually kick out a full-on song. Did I share that with you? Yeah. We did some Centurion fight songs, and I'll show you in a little bit. Okay, but those are the fun things that you can do to really dig in. I list prompt and also chain prompt. So when I say, hey, dig for more information after you get a prompt, that's called a chain prompt. All right, that's great. Can you tell me more about point 2 that you return? Okay, can you summarize what you return? Things like that. Look for errors, hallucinations, as they call it. And then just keep building on it. Okay, return to it. There's times I use it like every day, but there's times that I still forget to use it when I am presented with, hey, can you give me some ideas on this? I'm like, yeah, I'll give you some ideas. And then I realize I gave you some ideas, but then I go to the large language model, ChatGPT, and I come up with even more ideas and ideas that build on those ideas. So those are 5 different ways that you can kind of dig right in on a very basic level. But at the end of the day, the growth mindset is probably the most important thing, right? Not how is it going to overtake what I do? Not how are students going to cheat, all right? But it's not going away. How am I going to put it to use? Any questions? All right, then I have 8 questions for you. And what I would like you to do along with maybe answering these questions is also get on Copilot or get on ChatGPT and answer these questions in terms of your area. All right, so my first question to you is at MCC, how do we provide the skills and build the critical thinking competencies that students need to be prepared to enter a workplace that will use AI in key processes and tools? So that's a whole lot of question right there, okay? But think about your area and how you can have some influence on students using AI for critical thought and preparing them to enter a workforce that will probably use AI. If not right now, in a couple of years, they probably will. It's coming. I would say that the first step would be all of you attending this session. There you go. And whether you are a beginner to AI or you think that you're a pro, maybe you are a pro, okay? Doing something to maybe not only understand how to use it in your area, but also understand how others and where others are at in terms of its use. Because I'm guessing that if you walk down the hall to somebody to start talking about AI, you might have a concern about how much they know about AI. Okay. And so you're not quite sure where that starting point of that conversation will be. So if we can work to, was it a rising tide lifts all ships or something like that? Anybody know that quote? Okay, you can be the tide. So yeah, we're the tide. We're going to be the tide. Question number 2. Okay, throw this into the model. How can AI enhance MCC students' experience? We talked about accessibility. We talked about inclusion. We talked about things, the different tools that we have, immersive reader. Maybe just the mindset of AI in terms of adapting our instruction from an instructional standpoint. Oh, shoot, they're going to cheat if I do this basic writing assignment. How can I make it more about process than product? Okay. Oh, students might have questions about financial aid at 1 a.m. What can we do to help them? Okay. Is it a chat bot? Things like that. What do students do on their day-to-day in your area? How do you support students? How can you automate some of those things? That's not taking away from what you have to do every day, but that allows you to free up to do some other things. Question number 3. How can AI improve the effectiveness and efficiencies of our processes and support our strategic success? Well, look what I brought in. Okay, the strategic plan. So AI can help with this. All right. And if you go through the strategic plan like I did, you're going to find that pretty much every area or every item that we have listed here, AI can help with this. Okay, I'm not going to go over it right now. All right. But if you'd like to know how it might help support your area of the strategic plan or what you're doing in those areas of the strategic plan, we can work on that. All right. Understand that AI can help, but that doesn't mean that AI can do it. All right. AI can give you some ideas, but ultimately you're going to have to fine tune those ideas and put those ideas into action. Okay. As far as the strategic plan goes. Question number 4. What are the required skills, roles, and organizational structures of our students' workforce, and how will AI impact that? Does anybody have anything that they would like to share for this one right here? What skills will our students encounter in the workforce? And how will AI shape that? Do you have any relevant examples? Have you encountered any of these questions from students? Whenever I see workforce, I feel like I have to look at Tracy Taylor.
To Jack, just the idea of critical thinking skills, determine not.
So I don't know if everybody heard that, but Lisa said critical thinking skills are important and being able to apply new ideas, what's real, what's not real. What better place to do that than what AI might return to you on a prompt? Okay. What better place to do that than to question, okay, is this valid? Okay, because that sounds like a really good idea, but will it actually work? And putting those ideas into action, thinking about those in a critical way in terms of their area of expertise or work. Checking the chat, a couple chats came through. Elizabeth Kluster says, we do a research paper in business technical writing that focuses on practical and ethical use of AI at work. Okay, so that's an excellent example of specific use cases and checking, the actual validity of, does this work in the workforce? Sarah says, I would think that it would be important for students to recognize and be familiar, it just moved on me while I was reading that, with AI to avoid any artificial information being pushed out there. Okay, exactly. All right, fact checking. Okay, I've seen it where instructors have actually used AI responses from a fact checking standpoint. All right, so we're bringing a lot of different things together. I saw a Mario trailer that was generated by AI, proposed to have been made in the 50s and looked old. Okay, so what do they call that? Deep fakes. And we're hearing a lot more about deep fakes and things like that. Yes, scary, but if we're not preparing our students that and helping them to understand that those things exist, what are we doing? Okay. Cisco says, he says that I can add more to this since I was at the same conference, but AI had a heavy focus at the HLC conference, and I can add to that. And I attended several sessions on that, had a lot of great conversations in terms of that. And obviously there's a lot of talk about, like, do you have a policy in your course or at your institution and things like that. And the thing that I did find that I kind of already knew is that, like, every policy is different and everybody's approaching it different ways. And some courses or institutions have like 4 different AI policies that instructors can use in their courses. So go ahead and pick a policy. You can put that on your syllabus. And I understand why they're doing it, but I feel that that's difficult for students. Okay, so a student rolls into Carol's class and she has one AI policy, and they roll into Don's class and he's got another AI policy. I can do this here and I can do that there. When we want them to focus on physics and Spanish more than AI policy 1 and AI policy 2. Okay, so those are just some thoughts that I have and some questions that I have. And Cisco's right. We're going to be going to Lansing to rub some shoulders, and not actually physically, but talk to politicians and things like and leaders on AI and AI policy, stuff like that. So more coming our way. Question number 5. Don, do you have a question? Calculators. Right. And how we prepare students to have that growth mindset, or lifelong learners, as you put it. My first slide had, or second slide had, this is a calculator moment for like all topics in all areas, where it used to be like, I see Dan Long here, math was worried about calculators, and you're not going to be able to use that calculator once you get out of here. Well, funny thing is, we all walk around with a calculator every day, And so the shift in mindset and the transformation of these ideas is what's truly important. And teaching our students how to do or how to use AI. So a couple more questions. Doing pretty good on time. And know that if you do need to leave, I'm not holding you hostage. Take some pizza and go. But question number 5 is regarding policy. What AI related, and this is a lot, academic, research, ethical, data, privacy, acceptable use, and or intellectual property and other policy issues should we explore and develop? One thing I've learned about policy, especially since we've been talking about it, and I've talked to a lot of different groups, from ETOM to the HLC conference to sessions that I attend, and policy and AI come up at like every single one. What's your policy? What's your policy? Do you have a policy? Okay. So my question is, I struggle to create policy on something we don't really know the end game on. Like, how do you create policy on that? And like I told you 10 minutes ago, I'm not a policy expert. All right. So I guess, what's your perspective on AI policy? What do you think?
Kevin, can you hear me?
One second, Michelle. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Hold on. So Kurt was just commenting. He's in the back, so hard to hear. But he made the example of when Photoshop came into play in the industry, that was cheating, or that was cutting corners. And now we don't even think twice about making sure that we teach Photoshop and use Photoshop. You're crazy if you don't. And now you can use things like Canva that take Photoshop things and make them even easier. Like I could spend a lot of time getting rid of pixels on to make a person not have a background, or I could go to Canva and just say remove background, boom. And there's probably a quicker way to do it in Photoshop. That's just it's my lack of knowledge in that area. All right, Michelle, go ahead.
You know, in some ways, I wish my students would use AI to write, to start a paper. It seems like it would give them a way to start. That seems like the biggest inhibition for them is I don't know where to start. I had a project due for animal science. It was due yesterday, and they had to look up an animal industry company and say how they were trying to make their company more sustainable and emit less greenhouse gas emissions. And I asked them last week, and of the 12 students that were in class, only one had started the project because they were afraid. And I finally said, type it into Chat GPT and see what you get to start with, because they didn't know even how to start. And it seems like this would at least give them okay, now I can look up more stuff. You know what I mean? I don't want them to cheat, but at this point, I'm like, try it, use it, and then adjust what you get to fit the topic. I don't know. I'm not afraid of it so much as I wish the students would use it in some ways.
What's cheating?
Yeah.
What is cheating? There. Define cheating.
Exactly.
Don's going to define cheating.
Okay.
In a nutshell, right? Using someone else's intellectual property as your own. Well, it's tough to pinpoint that with generative AI. And Michelle, I love what you're doing, and you held their hand and you walked them through, and that's what we're going to have to do to start. Because some students are using it. I brought it up in my class. I don't know if it was last week or the week before, but I was like, how many of you are using AI? And they kind of looked around like they were getting busted. Like, should we admit this? This instructor is asking us if we've used AI. And I'm like, come on out. Let's go. I'm like, I want you to use it. And they're like, oh, boom. Everyone raised their hand. So they're a little bit concerned. Some of them might have used it, Michelle, but they didn't want you to know that they used it. It's weird. It's weird things we got going. So you holding their hand and you working with them on a practical use of it, a great use of it, I think is very important. So thanks for sharing there. All right. The essence of time, we're going to keep moving. Question number 6. Hopefully you've been putting these into ChatGPT for your area. But how does AI and its use align with our philosophy, approach, and core values? Okay. Hopefully you know those things. What's our vision? Well, I'll help you a little bit. Okay. So how can AI help with things that we set our sights on as an institution? Okay. It might not help us a ton with relationships and building community. All right. But I bet you we could really quickly find some examples of uses for student success, empowering students. Okay. Michelle just gave an example right there for both of those, really. Being visionary, inclusion, and also leveling up, excellence. Okay, if we're not focusing on this tool to guide us forward, or to at least use it for some ideas in terms of what we could do, okay, in our areas and as an institution as a whole, we're missing something. Okay. And please don't confuse that with we should take whatever ChatGPT says and run with exactly what it says. All right. It goes back to what Michelle says. It's a starting point. Okay. Second to last question. What does AI and its use, how does, AI and its use align with your philosophy, approach, and core values? Anyone want to stick their neck out and share on this? It's okay. I think it's an opportunity for a conversation, though.
Yeah.
No, I totally follow you. But my thought, my question that I often come back with that one is, what stops students from going to the library and just copying page after page? You would still have some suspicions. Could you find that book real quick back in the day in the library? You know, so unless you knew the book or the writing, you'd be like, that's just really good writing, obviously not yours, things like that. So I think using that instance right there to then have a conversation with that student, like, this is obviously not all of your work. Why are you doing this assignment right here? So that you can grow, not just because I want you to have a product. That goes back to that process piece. I would also say, hey, how about for one of your writing assignments, you have ChatGPT write the whole thing. And then you put in reverse and deconstruct it. Okay. You deconstruct the different parts of the writing. Where's that thesis statement? What's that conclusion? What would you do better or different on that conclusion that ChatGPT wrote? How would you make it yours? Stuff like that. So that's just an example right there. Shelley.
So I use AI writing. So yesterday, I had somebody. And so I've done a research first to satellite and run a bunch of stuff. And I thought, I'll stick it in AI to see what it comes back with. And so as I kept refining that search and refining that search, it finally got it down to context that was relevant to what we were trying to achieve. I still didn't use what it gave me, but it allowed me to then take that context and write something in the voice of the person that was presenting it. So, I mean, I feel like AI is just another tool in the toolbox for us and for me and what I'm doing.
My case in point is my daughter was doing something in 7th grade science, and it's been a minute since I did anything in 7th grade science. So the old example of explain it to me like I'm 12. It does a pretty good job of that. Okay. Now, Don could answer all those questions in 7th grade science, I'm sure, but I can't. We all have things that we're good at and not good at, and this can help with that and give us some context and a greater understanding of it. And if it can help us, don't you think it could help our students if they're struggling at night, working on something and can't get an answer for it? It's and you mentioned it being accurate in most cases. Copilot will actually cite sources as well. Can you explain what's a topic in science, Don? Hit me something quick. Dark matter? Nope. We'll see. So, and this will probably be the time that it doesn't cite its sources, but generally, it missed. It missed. But you can see, there we go. We actually have some sources at the bottom there that we can, okay, where did you get that from? And we can look into these sources. So getting a fuller understanding, we got this short little response here, but we can go get a fuller understanding of these topics from these sites. Okay, so it makes researching things a little bit easier. So thanks for sharing on that. Last but not least, what opportunities, drawbacks, and potential threats does AI present for the fundamental missions of teaching, learning, and research here? Okay. You don't have to answer this. If you have something that pops in your head, Don.
So I think
And that's kind of difficult in your area because you're dealing with fact or non-fact, right? In most cases. If you can have them draw upon relevant experiences, the model does not do well with that. Things that they have actually experienced. Okay. It has no way of knowing those things. So that's an example that I will always throw out. But yeah, I mean, I was trying to help with some triangles last week in math. That's Don, you can probably get at that too. And I tried to throw a picture of it into it, and Microsoft Math couldn't help me with it. So continuing to understand the scenarios in which that would present itself, understanding that the AI model might not get it right every time. That's where we're at right now. Obviously, things will continue to evolve. It'll probably get better, but we'll evolve as well. We always have. It's not just like, poof, we're going to disappear. No need for us anymore. We have AI models. So these, I don't have the answer to all these things. And I might say, shoot, Don. Don, you'll be retired by then. Don't worry. Anybody else want to contribute to this? Let's think. I know that drawbacks and potential threats are there, but what about what opportunities exist? What opportunities do you see? Don. I agree. And maybe a 16-week course, as we've always known, it can now be a 4-week course, and we can go deeper on topics and subjects. And maybe it means that times that we had to spend in the classroom might be times that we now spend, more job training, things like that. I'm just spitballing right here. But we always think about things in terms of how we've always done things. Well, how we've always done things is comfortable, and that's what we're used to. So obviously we like it, but like, what possibilities does this now present us? What time do we now have? It used to be in order to have a meeting, we'd have to drive to work and sit in the meeting and then have our meeting and then leave our meeting and drive home. Now we have more time because we can take our meeting from home if we need to. So what do we do with that time spent driving? What do we do with it? Well, some people scroll on their phone, but there's productive things that we can do too. So thinking about those things as we change and adapt to it is very important. So I appreciate everything that you contributed. I appreciate you being here. Just being here and I guess being a captive audience to this AI talk, I think is very important, not just what I think, but also in terms of the institution and leveling up. Obviously, there's a lot of different ways that you can put it to use. I think the best way is to just ask the model what it is that you can do in your role. It's a very powerful tool. We're just getting started. It's going to help with your efficiency. It's going to help you save time. Yes, there's going to be some concerns with it. Yes, there's going to be some problems that you're going to encounter. But try to keep a positive mindset and a growth mindset as you get to these things. These resources are great. I'll share them out. But one thing I want you to focus on, because I already mentioned it, was Suno. It's the second to last one. SUNO. It is absolutely phenomenal for creating songs. Okay. And I don't have one pulled up right now. I should have prepared better. But you can tell it, hey, will you write a fight song for the Centurions? We're green and yellow. We're in Sydney, and make it country or make it rock or make it rap. And it is good. It is good. So thanks for hanging out with me today. If you have any questions or want to meet up and maybe get more of a entry-level AI or go way past this, I'd love to hear from you. So have a good one. Get some pizza.